alive, but we're also on tape from the bowels of Lee's music. Chris Foulds, Marty Hastings, Kamloops Last week. Interesting show today. Could be an explosive show today. You want to talk about some of the inconsistencies with the vaccine rollout and other COVID regulation issues. I kind of want to get into some of the sports stuff that's been going on as well in that vein. And we have a guest on today.
We have a guest on today. We have a professor at Thompson Rivers University, Stephen Earle. He teaches earth sciences, and he's just written a book trying to explain sort of like a brief history of global warming over 4.6 billion years. Sounds dry, but it's actually got some really interesting stuff there that's very contemporary.
Global warming and COVID, it's quite a combination this morning.
It's a very upbeat show today.
At least it's not fires and smoke in the city. Mm-hmm. A new addition to the Last Week Clique. This is big news. So Bonnie, do you mind throwing this new slide on for us here? Twin River Painting. Twin River Painting, it's run by a good buddy of mine. You know Braden Vankoughnett from golfing with him a little bit.
I've golfed with Brennan, yep.
He's been shaving strokes off his golf game at the KGCC with Brett Burgerson and painting the finest strokes in Kamloops since 2007. He signed on to sponsor my segment, which is the title of Hastings. So thank you very much to Braden Vankoughnett for coming on board Twin River Painting. He joins the Last Week Clique along with our title sponsor, which is New Leaf Produce Market. Eyes on the camera. Okay, buddy? Let's go. Marty Hastings here outside New Leaf Produce Market with my new best Herman. Look at the camera, pal. Stay on your feet. Herman is paying us to do this commercial, but he said this. He said, Marty, on one condition. I do not want to be in the commercial. And I said, Herman, that is complete and total hogwash. You will be in the commercial. Because I won't let him be sheepish. Not when all of his produce is edible art, and not when it's a hyper-local labor of love from his family farm, Heffley Farms. And not when he sources seasonal product from more than 40 of the best regional suppliers, like Newfeld Farms in Abbotsford, British Columbia. I had to see it for myself. Nothing like a good road trip. In you get, Herman. Mark, yeah. Yeah, but let's go! Get me some sour keys, pal. No peeking, Herman. Oh. Help my goodness, Steve. Are these strawberries ever good?
You're quiet today, Herman. Want some corn?
Have a bite, Herm. Oh, and yes, it's true. A lot of people have asked me. They say, Marty, is he awkward on camera? I say, you're darn right he is. But this is a quality man who deals only in quality produce, and he has to be seen. Right, Herm? Okay, bud, last chance to make the catch. Let's go. Embarrassing.
You're going to hurt Herman.
Well, is there a watermelon in there?
There's a watermelon in there.
That's brand new, and there's a green apple, which I've never seen before either, and some corn, which is always good at this time of year.
That's not a green apple, that's a pear.
Okay.
And there's golden beets. There's golden beets in there. There were 2 purple top turnips, now there's only 1. I think Herman must have ate the other one. I don't know where it's gone. Mm-hmm. Winfield peaches, romaine. Share the episode on Facebook for a chance to win this haul.
And I'll throw in a green apple too.
The message is so simple. Go to New Leaf, get some great produce, but messages aren't always simple, as we've learned, Chris, and as you're going to explain in your segment, which is Above the Folds.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Where do you want to start, Chris?
Oh man, we're going 2 steps back. September 7th is two weeks away from now, and that's supposed to be our Freedom Day. That was supposed to be the day when we put this pandemic behind us and all the regulations and rules are gone. It's going the other way now. We're actually going backwards. Why that is multifaceted, but the problem, I think, superseding this is the communication from Interior Health all the way up to the Provincial Health Ministry in explaining to people why they should be vaccinated, why there's a vaccination certificate. It's very confusing. They're very, very horrible at explaining to the layman, here's why you need to do this, here's the end game. For the last week, people have been asking me and asking talk show hosts I listen to, if I'm vaccinated and you're vaccinated, and Mike and Bonnie are vaccinated and we're in a restaurant, that protects us more than, we can still get it, but we'll get sick less. What do we care if an unvaccinated person walks in? It's not going to affect us any more than, and that's never been explained. And then finally, it was asked on the air, and Adrian Dix finally explained. He says, well, and the unvaccinated, as far as we know, can have they can infect you at greater risk. And plus, the biggest thing was, we don't want unvaccinated people to clog up the hospitals, because they're more likely to be in the hospital. Right now, 96% of all the people in the hospital are unvaccinated or have one shot. And he explained it well when he was asked about it. They don't explain this in press conferences. They don't explain the fact that we don't want the healthcare system overrun so that your grandma's cancer surgery is canceled because we got these unvaccinated people clogging up the hallways.
Why don't we start with Friday and how it made you feel, though, when you first got the news?
Well, I saw it coming, and I think when we first had this in March 2020, my kids were asking me about this, and I'm no expert, but I read up on history, and we read about the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu officially lasted for two and a half years. It was probably much longer than that, because the cases probably went before that until it finally got into the trenches of the war and the barracks, and they realized this thing was here. So I said to my kids at the time, we're probably in this for 2 or 3 years in a staggered thing like we're doing now. I was under no illusion this year was going to be any different than last year. In fact, I'm on the record right now saying next year is going to be the same as this year. It's not going to be any different, and we got to get our mindset to it, because it's a horrible thing. There's nothing we can do about it. And that's not me being doom and gloom. That's
I think it is
being realistic about it, because the Delta variant is a game changer. There's a Lambda variant there's one case in BC right now they know of. The Lambda variant makes the Delta variant look like the cold. So what did I think, though, going back to that?
How did you actually feel, though?
I felt pissed off at the people who don't get vaccinated. I got pissed off. I have family members and friends who are complete anti-vaxxers. I get you can get serious. You can have legitimate questions about, should we be doing this? Should we cancel music in the park when it's safer than the patio across the street? That stuff pisses me off.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I think is legitimately debatable, not the conspiracy bullshit. I'm talking about, hey, you can't have music in the park where Mike Miltimore's helping running a fine show that's safer than anything in the world, but you can walk across the street to the Sandman, you can sit next to 1 million people and have drinks. How does that make any sense to the common person? This kind of inconsistency, here's the problem. It breeds the conspiracy theorists. It takes people who are on the fence and tips them the wrong way.
And words like revolt are too strong, and mutiny, but you will find people, you already are finding people who are just not going to obey this. You were talking about it earlier this morning.
There's 2 businesses we know of, one in Kamloops, one in Falkland, who have already said, we're running a business. It's not our job to check your health status. We're not checking the health status. We're going to let anyone in who wants to come in. We suggest you be vaccinated, but it's not our job to police that. That's going to grow exponentially.
The outdoor stuff too, which you just kind of talked about, music in the park. This is an IH quote right here, if I can just find it. They say, most people are being exposed at social gatherings, workplaces, or in private households. Now, I guess the social gathering could be music in the park, but that's outdoor.
No, they're talking social gatherings indoor, and that's the same thing they've been saying for 1.5 years. You're right. Yes.
So I'll get into that more with the sports stuff, but it's hard to have to do this rollback when we've been dangled this carrot of go get vaccinated, and our vaccination levels are pretty high now in sports. The Wolfpack are at like 95%, and the Broncos are at 80% and climbing, and they've done everything. I'm in my segment here talking now, but they've done everything they can, and now it's kind of stripped away all of a sudden, when I'm not sure that it needs to be so heavy-handed when it comes to these outdoor sports and events that aren't kind of hotspots for the spread of it.
They're not hotspots, and Dr. Bonnie Henry said that last week when she was at the BC Lions game, and then she was at the Vancouver Whitecaps games, and she was criticized at the Lions games for not wearing a mask in her suite with all the vaccinated people. And she said right there, you're in an outdoor setting because the roof was open. I'm distanced with people who are vaccinated, and she said right there's an extremely low risk. So if there's an extremely low risk of the provincial health officer in a suite with people and taking selfies with fans, then the risk at something like music in the park is nil.
Well, then how hard is it to look at TV at Lions games and Whitecaps games and seeing these crowds that are being allowed, and we're not allowed to have 100 people, 150 people at music in the park?
And yet you can have 12,500 at BC Place and walking shoulder to shoulder down the corridor. It's. I don't want to make this seem like we're saying this. It's all wrong and everything.
No.
They have to do something, right? And I think going back to our original reason for this discussion, the communication from the authorities has been less than stellar, and I think what they really need to do is work on explaining to the dummies like us why they're doing this, because if you don't explain it well, then the people are going to say, don't believe it, and they're going to go to that weird side, that weird Freedom Rally side, and you're going to lose more and more people. Yeah, well, and let's acknowledge, we don't deny that the numbers are going up. We believe in the COVID numbers going up. It's a real pandemic.
The nurses are walking off. It's a terrible situation. It's still dangerous.
We get all that.
Our main gripe is the communication and how it's screwing with people's mentality.
And the inconsistency in the measures, and if there is logic in what we see as inconsistency, explain it to us. Explain it to us so we understand. I talk to virologists. I talk to an infectious disease expert in Kamloops all the time, a great doctor in town, and I always text her because she explains stuff to me. And when I have a question, I'll explain it, ask her. They need to do what she's doing when I'm just texting her, because then I understand it better.
Is that a new shirt?
No, this is a shirt I wore actually on the first show, I think it was.
Oh, you're back. You're into the repeat mode.
Well, I'm going to the repeat mode because I had a rough morning this morning with.
You didn't shave?
I didn't shave, and I anyway, it's just running around doing stuff. Life gets in the way sometimes.
All right, let's go to the next segment. Tattie Hastings. That's a great picture.
Great photo. LED.
I believe that's Kudamura Saranwa. I want to use the Broncos as kind of a case study for what's going on with the communication. Jan Anton's the GM of the Kamloops Broncos. He was just as surprised as me at the communication that's going on from IH. So we get a bulletin on Friday, and in that bulletin it looks like outdoor gathering sizes, from what I could see, were 100. And there was nothing about no competition in that bulletin. Then all of a sudden, last night, just after deadline, I've written a story, which is now complete garbage and trash, as usual, I guess.
As usual, yeah.
That says, okay, in interior health, no competition. It doesn't give any variation between youth sports, amateur sports, junior. It just says no competition.
Doesn't define it. Doesn't specify. It just says no competition.
Right, and it says maximum gathering sizes outdoors are 50. Now that's a huge distinction for someone like the TRU Wolfpack and AD Curtis Atkinson, who had no idea that it was 50. Mm-hmm. His soccer teams can play if it's 100. They can't play if it's 50. Right. So is that a big deal? It absolutely is. Who haven't played for almost 2 years, I guess it is now. And they've been working toward these home openers. They have these big plans for these home openers, and now they're off the table for September. For the Broncos, there is potential for this to mean that the first 4 games of their regular season are done. Now, that's not for sure. That just is if they can't travel for liability issues, which Jan Antons is trying to figure out.
Again, no one knows what the hell's going on.
And if Jan Antons can't get a hold of it, because this guy, all he does is work and volunteer, it goes up to, Meg Miltimore's laughing, it goes to the provincial, right to the top, to the province, to IH, it goes to Via Sport, and to the governing bodies. The communication is a disaster. It's a bungle show.
There's way too many cooks in the kitchen, for one thing, too.
Right. So I call up Kieran McMahon this morning, who is one of the top dogs at the KYSA, and he's under the impression this isn't going to have a huge impact on intra-city play within the city with his youth
But it says
teams.
no competition.
But it says no competition. So he's getting double clarification, or trying to.
We don't know what's going on, basically,
Anyway, let's go back to the Broncos. I went to practice on Monday and talked to some of these kids about how they're feeling about the postponement of their first game.
Oh, it's definitely frustrating, but I think it just builds the anticipation and builds the excitement for us. You know what? We're just delaying the inevitable. We're going to get to go out there and kick somebody's butt on Saturday. It's just a matter of when that Saturday is, right? Next week, 2 weeks from now, September 11th, when we go to Valley, it doesn't really matter to us. We're going to be ready to play some football.
How long has this wait felt like for you?
Oh man, forever. And it's crazy because in Canada, that Vanier Cup game was the last game that was played by anyone. So technically I'm as fresh as anybody is, but I feel so far removed from the game.
You mentioned the 2019 season, that was an 0-10 season. 2018 was an 0-10 season, so you're going to have your doubters. How do you address those doubters?
you can't really address them too much. All I can go off is what I'm saying. And I know with the guys that I've brought in, the coaching staff that I have, and kind of the way we're approaching things, we definitely aren't the same football team. There's no way we go 0-10 again this year. Our sights are set on the playoffs, and from there we'll see what happens. So we plan to come and win some football games and do it in an aggressive and intense way.
2018, 2019, 0-10 season, so that there are going to be doubters out there.
100%.
How do you approach it?
You know what, man? Like, bring it on.
Trying to get all my reps in. Just because I'm young, I have to fight for a spot. And then hopefully out of this, I'll be able to go to college or university.
You wait so long and now you have to postpone game again. Like
Right.
your week 1 game is postponed. How much does it suck to get that news, you know?
Man, it's kind of a shot in the gut for sure. You know, like you're out here sweating every day. Like that's like your goal in mind, right? And you're like talking about every day. You're visualizing it, and then boom, falls through again. Like everything seems to have done over the last 2 years, right?
Scheduled to play this weekend coming up, but that one got canceled. Yeah. How frustrating is this?
Yeah, we were all really excited. The team was really pumped up, but we'll get them there whenever it's rescheduled. And hopefully it'll turn out well.
I think today we're going to learn a lot more about the distinctions between the different sports, and hopefully Jan can get some confirmation that there's not going to be liability issues if they travel, and that way they can kind of save their season. But it's not over the top to say that the Broncos are in danger as a franchise. I mean, if they lose another season, which is probably not going to happen, but it's possible. What about a team like the Kamloops Storm, the KIJHL? Can they go another season? I'm not saying it's going to happen. And the big thing is the open-endedness of this all. They say that, okay, this is going to be till at least the end of September.
Then we review it.
And then we'll review it.
Right.
So we could be going all the way through the winter with this again.
We could.
I've got people texting me that their men's nights are back to, the men's beer league hockey games are back to scrimmage only, which is total BS, and no one wants to do that. You can't go to the room and have beers with your buddies. That's going to be taken away again, or it could be, but we just don't know. It's so frustrating again to not have anybody stepping up and being more transparent about what's actually happening, so people aren't losing their minds.
This is the pandemic I think is the first time in history where temporary has become permanent.
Yeah.
Right.
And I do have patience for the people in charge because they're dealing with this for the first time.
Sure, it's new.
But is it really new anymore though? No, We've been doing this for a while now. There's been time to streamline some of this.
Communication is the key. And I tell you this, man, the government departments have larger newsrooms than all the media combined. They should be able to figure this out. They have more people than we do in our newsroom.
Yeah. So if you're little Timmy and Darlene and you don't know if you can play your youth T-ball, join the club. There's a lot of people that are mad, and it's understandable. Yeah. Let's move to a less controversial subject now, climate change, in the next segment, which is last week, this week. Chris, can you introduce our guest today?
Yes, our guest today is Professor Stephen Earle. I think we call him Dr. Stephen Earle because he has a PhD. He's an earth sciences professor at the Open Learning Institute that's at TRU. He has been teaching this in field for almost 4 decades. He was at Vancouver University, and he has a textbook, a well-known textbook called Physical Geography, I think, or Geology, and it's in the 2nd edition now. So he's actually written an entire textbook, and he's just publishing a book, and it's about 4.6 billion years of climate shifting on our planet, and it's basically a brief history for the layman like us to explain climate shifting, the human impact on it, and interestingly in there talking about those who are skeptics, how we talk to the skeptics, and how we explain to them that this is real.
Let's bring him in right now.
All right, so welcome Stephen Earle from Earth Sciences at the Open Learning at TRU. You have a book out. I just saw it on the chapter's website, and it's about 4 points. What's the name of the book?
It's called A Brief History of the Earth's Climate. So it's looking at how the Earth's climate has changed over geological time, 4.6 billion years. It's focusing on those natural changes in the climate, how the processes that have led to climate change in the past, and really how they are different from what is happening now, which is anthropogenic or man-made climate change.
Right.
And really it's extremely important, I think, to understand the natural processes of climate change in order for us to fully understand what's happening right now.
What does cause climate change aside if man wasn't here? What are the factors?
All sorts of factors. The sun, for example, is changing extremely slowly. It's now about 40% hotter than it was at the start of geological time, and over that time, life on Earth has done things to moderate the climate so that it hasn't got too hot. So that's one thing. Plate tectonics changes the climate because it moves continents around, and that changes how ocean currents work and how light reflects from different surfaces. So that can change the climate. Volcanoes change the climate. They can cool the climate over a short period, but they can also warm the climate. What we call Milankovitch cycles, the way the Earth orbits around the sun and the tilt of the Earth, that also changes the climate. So those are just a few of the ways that the climate naturally changes. So if we understand how those things work and what the trends are from those things, which are still acting, then we can figure out the degree to which they are contributing to climate change now. And in fact, they're not. Well, for the only thing that those natural things are doing right now is leading to very little cooling.
Right.
So the Earth is warming, and we can conclude, therefore, that it's not those natural things.
And it's man-made activities that is sending us into this perilous area.
That's right. It's our use of fossil fuels for the most part. That's driving. It's generating electricity, mostly in other places. It's manufacturing things. Stuff we buy all has to be manufactured, and so that's creating emissions. It's a whole range of different things, making steel, making concrete, and so on. And then those are all things that generate carbon dioxide, but there's also methane, which is coming from our production of fossil fuels, and but also from our production of beef, for example, which is huge.
Now, the heat dome we just had, we had this incredible heat dome, record temperatures, 47.3 in Kamloops, a Canadian record in Lytton, 49.6. And there's been talk about that in conjunction with climate change. I understand it's maybe not a direct link, but there is a domino effect. Is that right?
Climate scientists are reluctant to say this particular event is because of human-caused climate change, but they were pretty clear about the heat dome being a more or less direct result of climate change. The forest fires that you guys are experiencing really seriously in the Kamloops area, they can be attributed to drying out of the forests and just making it more likely that we're going to have forest fires. Things like tropical storms, which we don't get, but that's another thing that can be directly attributed to climate change.
How often do you find yourself in debates about this?
Not that often myself. I don't know that many people that are in denial of climate change.
Do you have Facebook?
I don't use Facebook, so
good for you.
I'm not there. But more often, it's having debates with people about what we should do about climate change. Most of the people I know, and I think most people everywhere, accept that we are changing the climate, but people are not coming to grips with what we have to do, what we as individuals have to do.
Canada and British Columbia, and I think every other province since this whole discussion began decades ago, have always set these emission targets, and we've failed every single time. We never hit them. BC is and there's inconsistency there. BC has the largest coal export terminal. We export coal to Asia. We have LNG. There's I think 70 coal plants being built in China this month. There's all this going on. We have a city council in Kamloops that had this big document about climate action, yet they approve drive-through restaurants, which encourages idling, which you mentioned. The emissions from cars is number one. So there's all these inconsistent things happening. What can we do, or are we hooped?
No, we're not hooped, but we have to get our government to become serious. They like to make targets 15, 20, 30 years into the future because they know they're not going to be there to see that they're met. We have to get governments to set shorter term targets and obviously more stringent targets. But we as individuals also have to take responsibility for what we're doing, and that means driving less, or not driving at all, biking, walking, whatever, or taking the bus. And if we have to drive and can afford it, then getting an electric car. So that's really the most important thing we can do. Another thing we can do that's really going to make a difference is eating less beef. If you look at the graph that shows emissions by food types, beef is just out in a class of its own, because of the way cows work. Their ruminant physiology produces a lot of methane, and so the more beef we eat, the more methane that's going up there, and methane is a serious climate changing gas.
And I think the room they need, I know in South America, vast tracts of forest have to be cleared so that they can have these animals out there. So it's amplified that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I asked you a minute ago whether we're hooped. You said we're not. But I know that in preparing for this interview, Kevin Anderson, all the way back in 2008, he's with the Tyndale Center for Climate Change at Manchester University. And a bunch of others since then have said, we're at the point, Sir David Attenborough and others, we're at the point now where we're not at the tipping point, but we're at the point now where we have to think about mitigation because we've gone too far. We can't stop climate change. Do you agree with that?
Yes, we do have to be thinking about mitigation, but we must keep focused on reducing our climate changing impact, because the more we do on that front, the easier the mitigation steps are going to be, and the easier it's going to be in decades to come to cope with climate change. So yes, mitigation is important, but no, we can't take our eyes off the ball in terms of reducing our climate impacts. It's just, that would be stupid.
Any last words? Anything you want to talk about? What's top of mind?
Top of mind. I just urge people to make every effort they can to reduce the amount they drive, reduce the amount of beef they eat, and take this seriously, because we as individuals are the ones that got ourselves into this. We can't blame governments and industry. It's people that use the fossil fuels. And so as individuals, we are the ones that are going to have to make the changes that are going to get us out of it.
Yeah, be a good citizen, make good choices, right? There you go. Again, the name of the book?
The book is called A Brief History of the Earth's Climate.
And it can be found at Chapters and all other bookstores and online and all that.
Yeah, online. It'll be in bookstores. But yeah, it's the usual places.
Excellent.
All right, thanks for joining us, and stay off Facebook. It's not a good place to go, especially for someone like you. You'll be like Chris on debates till 3 a.m. every morning.
Thank you.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Steve and Earl for joining us. Chris, any thoughts on the show today?
I think this kind of stuff just fascinates me. I could talk about this all day because it's just excellent topic. Very, very smart guy. And I just like to, I said this before, if we do a show and I learn something, I'm happy.
We should get somebody with a different opinion than him another time. I mean, there's got to be some people out there who are going to be yelling at their screens, right?
I think Herman would make more sense than most of those people who deny climate change. So, yeah. I think I get more out of talking to Herman. Yeah. But
so we're not going to give them a platform, but we'll give Herman a platform.
There's a legitimate debate, and then there's nonsense. But I thought it was a good show. But I think I just want to clarify: we're not sort of slamming Dr. Bonnie Henry or anyone else. This is a real pandemic. This is a real virus. People are dying. I get that. And it's the messaging.
No, I think it's
and
okay.
The messaging helps everything.
It's okay to express some frustration. Mm-hmm. I think it's on behalf of the community. I mean, I was golfing with my friends on Friday, and our first reaction was, "You got to be kidding me!" Like we feel like we've done so much, we've done our part, and to have to go back. I understand why we're doing it. It's okay to have that initial reaction of this really sucks, because it does. And here we are back to almost square one again, but. Yep. We move forward, and we'll move forward with the show next week with the help of our title sponsor, New Leaf Produce Market, and of our brand new segment sponsor, Twin River Painting. My boy, Brendan Krauser. Look him up online and hire him. He does a great job. He always has, and he always will. The Grand Ones, thank you for the music to Mike Miltimore, Magic Mike, and to Bonnie, hammering the buttons, making us look good. Thanks again. We'll see you last week.